Welcome to EcksToo. I'm Corey, and today I'm going to be talking to you about some upcoming Star Wars Empire at War mod news, specifically some changes coming to Empire at War Expanded Thrawn's Revenge. So for people who are less familiar with the mod, the Empire of the Hand may be one of the more obscure Star Wars factions. It's something that's actually been in the mod since the initial releases, but we have had to fill a lot of gaps with the faction. We know that the faction was quite large and powerful in the unknown regions, and we know some units like the Chiss Clawcraft and Chiss Star Destroyer that were used by them, but there's not much else that we know directly about their navy, so that's an area where we've always had to make up our own designs. The last batch of designs we had for them were typically started around 2010, and they were in need of some proper concepts and updates. So today we're going to be taking a look at ships belonging to the Empire of the Hand as well as the Chiss, and kind of seeing some of the different groups that make up them. So we'll start with the Chiss Ascendancy units because people are generally familiar with the Chiss Ascendancy to some degree, even if you've never heard of the Empire of the Hand. So basically the way the Empire of the Hand works is it's led by a mix of Imperials that were brought to the unknown regions by Thrawn, as well as some of his Chiss Ascendancy supporters. And there was some military hardware sent to the Empire of the Hand by each side. So there's some directly Chiss ships. There are less commonly some directly Imperial ships, like Star Destroyers that were sent with Thrawn's original expedition, and then some other stuff that was sent later. But the vast majority of their units tend to be self-built. So we have basically split the faction into three different types of units. There are the Chiss ships themselves, which we're going to start off with here, which starts off with the Syzygos, which is kind of the Chiss direct anti-fighter unit. And we've tried to stay consistent with the art style of a lot of the units so that when a Chiss ship is there, it should look pretty obvious that it is a Chiss ship. When an Empire of the Hand mix of Chiss and Imperial technology is there, it should be pretty obvious that that's the case as well. So next up for the Syzygos, we have the Furo. We are in instant action mode, so sometimes the ships like to go and head off to other of the markers. But this is kind of the Carrack analog, or the Nebulon B analog. It has 2 light dual mega masers, 2 light dual ion cannons, and with all ships, you can hover over, look at the tooltips, and that'll give a good breakdown of what their stats are in the mod. But next up, after the Furo for the Chiss, we have the Prolipsy Interdictor, which is the ship you use to stop the enemy from retreating from combat, which is a slight bit longer. And right now there's a pretty big jump in the size of Chiss units from these kind of smaller frigates and corvettes, and the Prolipsy, which is about a medium-sized frigate, up to the next set of Chiss units. We do have a few more Chiss units in development for when we start working on the Chiss Ascendancy as their own faction instead of just part of the Empire of the Hand, or their units being part of the Empire of the Hand. But we do have 3 more pure Chiss ships here, with the Chaff Destroyer, which is again a rework of existing units. So all of these so far, except the Syzygos, have been reworks of existing units. Next up we have one of my favorite units, the Phalanx. But you can kind of see the similar style to the hull plating, to the details that exist throughout the Chiss ships. So this is the Phalanx. We tried to keep kind of the almost battle axe shape to some of the main hull while still giving it a more distinct look. And then finally we have a new ship, the Intego, which we've been kind of working on for years, but never really got a design that worked in Empire at War or a model and texture really. But with this newer slate of redesigns, we have the Intego. So within the Chiss, the Intego is kind of their large defensive battlecruiser. It has a lot of hull and shields. Its weapons are really good, but not quite what you're bringing it for. And you can kind of see that from the armor plating being a lot more extensive on the ship, compared to the Phalanx, which is a lot more offensively oriented. So in some of your larger fleets, you're probably going to want an Intego kind of holding the front line, and a Phalanx doing a lot of your damage, supported by a lot of these other ships. And the Empire of the Hand as a faction, the Chiss as a faction, will tend to emphasize speed and firepower over defenses. There are some bits of information that came in Thrawn Chaos Rising that we will be taking into account with this, even though that is canon and this is a Legends mod. Generally, when Timothy Zahn does stuff, he's going to be following a similar idea no matter which timeline he was working in. So when it comes to the basic ideas of like ship classifications and characters, he'll generally be doing a similar thing that he was intending to do in Legends. So a lot of these we're going to be naming into like Syndic and Phalanx class Night Dragon, which is the term used for Chiss ships in the book there. But again, there are about 3 other frigates that we have done for the Chiss themselves when they get added as their own faction. But this is going to be the Chiss representation within the Empire of the Hand. And that is one of, again, 3 major groupings of ships. The second major grouping are ships that are made from a mix of Chiss engineering and Imperial engineering. So kind of taking Imperial designs and applying some of these Chiss stylistic elements to them. So we will take a look at those next. But there is also the third group, which is kind of the mix of smaller local forces. The Empire of the Hand, well, they were led by the Chiss and the Imperials, and that would have made up a good chunk of their forces. They also tended to involve, I'll throw in something for them to fight while we do this. But the Empire of the Hand forces also tend to involve a lot of local planets that were incorporated into Thrawn's Confederation in the Empire of the Hand. So we have a couple unit types that represent different groups like that. There's basically 3 different smaller local groups we're trying to represent with 2 units per group. So 6 of the Empire of the Hand units are kind of taken from these different groups, and we'll have different art styles, each of them will, and kind of just show that the Empire of the Hand is a mix of different forces. Whereas the Chiss are going to look a lot more uniform, or factions like the Hapens would look a lot more uniform. The Empire of the Hand is going to look more like the Confederation it is, and somewhat like the New Republic in that way, but more authoritarian. But let's take a look at some of these Imperial forces. First up, we are going to have the Ormos class carrier. This is kind of it's a carrier, and it's kind of taking some cues from things like the Venator. Not entirely, not as much as it used to, but it is going to be your kind of, in role, it's more like a Quasar with maybe a bit of heavier weaponry here, because we do have, on top of 2 dual Mazer cannons, we also have 2 medium Mega Mazers. So it's capable of a bit more offensive action on its own than you'd typically see out of something like the Quasar. But we got that there. Next up, we have the... and I should actually say, first off, the Intego design was made by Valerie, our concept artist, and modeled by Eckhartsladder, and then Eckhartsladder took those principles from the Intego and used it to design the rest of these Chiss units, including the 3 upcoming Chiss units. So the Phalanx, the Syndic, and then I did the textures for those. The Ormos model was done by Eckhartsladder. The designs for all the Imperial and Chiss mixes were done by Eckhartsladder, and then those textures tended to be done by 3Cole, who also, I believe, helped with some of the models. Then we have, next up, the Kinda Ghost, which is kind of like the Empire of the Hand Dreadnought analog. Let's bring in some more Imperial units for us to fight here. But you can see here, it kind of follows some similar elements to the Dreadnought, but kind of chissified to match these guys a little bit more. But that's kind of the role and size class it's in. It's about 600 meters. It's got some decent offensive armaments, and again, a little bit less defensively oriented than its Imperial counterparts, like a lot of the Empire of the Hand stuff. Next up, we have the Chaff Destroyer. This is one of the more directly offensively oriented ships, getting towards the heavy frigate or capital ship side of the Imperial contingent, or the Empire-based section of the Empire of the Hand. We tried to keep the kind of shovel look at the back without being as big of an impediment to the engines, or without taking up as much of the as much of the overall design if you were familiar with the original. But next up from that, we have the other ship that's kind of taken as the kind of Chiss Star Destroyer from Legends, alongside with the Chaff. We have the Ascendancy Star Destroyer, which is a capital ship carrier. So it's a little bit more in the vein of the Endurance Inventor, somewhere in there, though with a bit more offensive capability as well. So really, you could put it somewhere between the Nebula class and the Endurance, and that's kind of what you're looking at with the Ascendancy. Next up, we have a design that wasn't changed that much. It got a bit of a retexture, and I think it got a couple model touch-ups, but the Peltist, which is a long-range sniper Star Destroyer variant, almost like the Aggressor in base game, kind of based off those same ideas. And I don't know what it's going for there. Nice shot there, buddy. But hey, it did its best. It did its best. But we have one more ship that is still kind of in progress here, aside from the Executor that they're going to be fighting right now. New model we're going to be taking a look at in a different video. But we have the Phodio. This is a fleet tender. So if you're familiar with the Altor, which is one of Fractal Sponge's designs, then it's kind of filling the same role. The Empire of the Hand has a vast amount of territory, so being able to resupply areas is pretty important for them. And this ship kind of fills that role, which means in combat it's going to be a little bit less armed. It's less there for its own good, and it serves primarily to use healing abilities, resupply abilities, and be a general support ship for the Empire of the Hand. So it's going to be, it has a repair aura, or whatever you want to call it, an area of effect repair, and have some other boosts for you in combat. But like I said, we're going to have another video coming up that Eck has asked me to do, taking a look at some of these Super Star Destroyer updates when a little bit of stuff has been finished off on the Executor. That's still to come. But we're going to have a couple more videos looking at Thrawn's Revenge and Fall of the Republic leading up into the release period for those mods. On top of my contributions here on EcksToo, I'm also the lead developer of Thrawn's Revenge and Fall of the Republic. So we figured rather than making Charlie do that and have me tell him what to say, it made more sense to just have me come and talk about that myself. But if you would like to see more on the mod as it gets developed, or see some of this stuff in use in preview playthroughs, you can follow here on EcksToo, and I'll be making some more of those videos. But you can also follow me on the CoreyLoses YouTube channel, where I do some preview playthroughs. I have an Empire of the Hand one going on, as well as a New Republic one. But you can find the mods, that channel, in links in the description. You can download them on Steam. We don't have a release date for 3.0, which is the next version of Thrawn's Revenge, just yet, but that will be not super far off, so stay tuned here for some more skirmish action between me, Charlie, and hopefully Eck when he's available, along with some other mod news. Thanks for watching, and hope to see you next time.